Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupini avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So we were discussing in the last session some aspects linked to the Mahabharata concept of the evil. And there is no better way to explain this than by comparing Duryodhana and his self-deception and his attempt to deceive everyone else, even in spite of several attempts on the part of many elders in the Kaurava family itself, and also Lord Krishna, who did his best to avert and avoid this imminent war. And how Krishna tried his best to avoid this war, going to the assembly as an ambassador, as a representative, a mediator. He was impartial, totally impartial. And then Duryodhana finally made the statement, Yavat hi sujyas tikshnayaha vidyet agrena marisha tavadabi abharityajyam bhumena pandavan prati. I mean, he says, I cannot even give up one dot of land that is suchyagramiva, means even enough land to hold the point of a needle. To that extent, Duryodhana declined Krishna's proposals, and above all that, he said he has taken a vow to murder, to wipe out the entire Kaurava family. That is a culture. See, he says, Aham chak tada karnascha ranayajnam vidastyevai yudhishtiram pashum krutva dikshitau bharadashava. These are very, very powerful lines. Maybe some of them are almost unrivaled for their cruelty and the ferocity of the strong emotions, sometimes very evil emotions. So Mahabharata is so unique. It contains some of the most exalted characters, ideas, and very highly exalted idealism of peace and universality. Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, that is also from Mahabharata. The whole world, humanity is one spiritual family. That is also Mahabharata. See, Ayam Nija Parovedi Laguna Ganana Laguchedasam Udara Charidanam tu Vasudha Eva Kudumbakam. That is the final statement in one at the end of a dialogue. I mean, this is mine, that's yours. This discrimination, this prejudice is only found among small-minded people. People who are very, very small in their mind, in their ideas. This is mine, that's yours. That doesn't belong to you, this belongs to me, this idea. Udara Charidanantu. Udara means those who are generous, broad-minded, cultured, evolved. For them, Vasudha eva Kudumbagam. Vasudha means the earth and also means humanity, human society. Itself is one single spiritual family. That is also from Mahabharata. And here Duryodhana says, Karna and I have together taken a vow, like a sacred ritual. You try to, you take a vow for going on a pilgrimage. People, when they go for a pilgrimage, or they perform, when they want to perform a Vedic ritual, they have to take a sankalpa, a vow. I will do this, I will fast so many days, I will meditate for so many days, I will deprive myself of all the luxuries for so many days. These are different kinds of vows. Duryodhana says he also has taken a vow along with Karna. What is a vow? A strong resolve to perform a ritual, a Vedic ritual. So a Vedic ritual needs a lot of things to be offered in the home of fire, Yagagni. Ritviks, priest, Hoda representing Rigveda tradition, Adhiryu representing Yajurveda tradition, Udgada representing Samaveda tradition, Brahman representing Atharvaveda tradition. They should come and they should pray to the deities. This is not mine, everything is yours. They pray, they pray for rains, for prosperity. Some of these Vedic rituals are still taking place in India. They gather and they pray, they do offering to the fire, which is supposed to take these offerings to the deities for rains, for prosperity, for peace, world peace, Lokasangraha. These are different purposes for which they used to perform rituals. But this gentleman, this Duryodhana has taken a vow. What is vow? To destroy the entire Pandava family, to wipe out. That was he says. So he says, Yudhishtiram Pashum Krutva Dikshido Bharadashapa. In ancient time, they had Pashu Bali, Pashu Alapanam. They had a ritual of this killing one animal, goat or something they will kill as part of the ancient. Not, these days it's never done, but in ancient times it was common practice. So, but we are going to kill Yudhishthira instead of an animal. That is the vow we have taken. That is the cruel words of Duryodhana. Then he says, of course this continues, Ratho Vedi Sruvo Khadgo Gada Sruk Kavajo Ajinam Chadurhotram Cha Dhurya Me Shara Darbha Havir Yashaka. So that altered Vedic ritual, that is chariot, war chariots, in ancient times, war chariot, and then sword and mace and the different equipments needed to protect the body against the enemy's thrust and enemy's hits. Now attack. So these are different things that we are going to use in this Vedic ritual, in the yajna. Now, you know why I'm explaining this? There's a lot of criticism against Krishna. You find in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna asking Arjuna, look here, your duty is the duty of a soldier, Kshatriya. That's the duty you have to do. So Arjuna felt a lot of remorse. Well, how can I fight? It's wrong to fight with to hurt anyone. It's wrong to hurt anyone, to do harm to anyone. It's wrong. Then and again, the Arjuna completely forgot that he was supposed to wage a war against these evil people who are bent upon wiping them all out. Arjuna forgot. So Krishna tell him, we did our best to avoid this problem, avoid this war. We did our best to avoid all these problems. Now it's your duty. So Krishna tells him to do your duty as a sacred duty for the good of the world, for the Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangrahan Kartum, Krishna says. You know why I'm mentioning this? Because Bhagavad Gita is such a unique masterpiece. It is maybe the greatest book on peace, not on war, as many people misunderstand. Because the teaching was given by Krishna just to make sure that the world doesn't perish. The world is sustained. For that purpose, you should perform your duty. We already discussed this. I'm not going to continue or repeat this again. But just wanted to remind you, at the end, Krishna's, of course, it says, Mahavanam vivachinnam yada drakshasi patidam velam kurunam bho bhimena gada smartasi me vacha. So, at the end of it, the word comes here, this conversation between Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. He says Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra himself he kind of soliloquy. He says, I did my best to restrain his son Duryodhana. Duryodhana was bent upon doing this destruction. There's a dialogue between Duryodhana and his father Dhritarashtra. So, while addressing Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana says, we have taken a vow, a sacred vow, to wipe out the entire Pandava family. So that was, at the end, Dhritarashtra understood, well, I can't do anything about it. Dhritarashtra foresees the disaster that's going to happen. Now he understands the war is imminent. So he did his best, but he could not do anything. Then he says, Mahamanam ivachinnam, like a big forest which is going to be destroyed. Every tree will be cut down. Like that, I could see in future, I have a vision of what is going to happen. Drakshasi padidam balam kurunam bhau bhimena tada smartasi me vacha. The Rashtra, with terror in his eyes, as he visualizes what is going to happen when the war actually takes place, he says, you will remember these words which I uttered to you right now, today, to avoid the war. When do you remember? When like a forest is completely destroyed, when every tree is cut down, like that the entire Kaurava race is wiped out, destroyed. At that time you remember. My father told me all these words once upon a time. So this end of this particular dialogue between Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Those who are interested, you can see, it comes in Mahabharata, in Udyoga Parva, and it's chapter 58, Ashta Panchadasatamu Udhyayaha. So means 58, Panchadasatamu Udhyayaha. Dhritarashtra, that's where it begins. So if you are interested, you can read at least English translation, you can read. But Sanskrit has its own greatness. It is so magnificent, a wonderful piece of art. Now we are coming to a different topic today. That is, we are going to discuss Uttara Gita. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, which has 18 chapters, which we discussed almost for 3.5 years on this platform. We have almost 200 classes on Bhagavad Gita, which discussed, which has got 18 chapters. The Bhishma Parva, from 25th to 42nd chapter, 18 chapters, 700 verses. That is Bhagavad Gita. Now, there is another Gita that you find in the popular Sanskrit literature. It is called Uttara Gita. Uttara means the latter. But you should keep in mind that this is not really found as an integral part of Mahabharata critical edition. You don't find it. But it is supposed to be a part of Mahabharata. There's a traditional belief. Many scholars will argue that these were later interpolations. But it is very famous for some very great ideas that are found in this section. It has got 3 chapters. According to one version, 122nd verses, slokas. According to another version, 119 verses. It is much smaller. Bhagavad Gita contains 18 chapters. It is a very important and integral part of Bhishma Parva. Bhishma Parva. Bhishma Parva is perhaps the most extensive, the most profound section of Mahabharata. Bhishma Parva, chapter 25 to 42nd. That is Bhagavad Gita. But Uttara Gita, again, I want to make sure that don't misunderstand. Uttara Gita will not be found as a separate section in the received editions of Mahabharata. So it could be, according to scholars, it could be 3 additional chapters which were added to Mahabharata in later times. But again, traditionally, it is not considered to be part of Mahabharata. So, this is what the Uttara Gita. It's very important from one perspective. It contains some very, very important ideas about human life. It is itself a great repository of many ideas, many higher principles and teachings linked to the philosophy of values. So that's the importance of this. So I shall take just a few verses from the Uttara Gita. This is very important because, see, for example, there is a description of human life from a very, very ordinary perspective. Normal person needs food, sleep, and other biological needs. And those things are found also among the animal kingdom. Desire for food, for shelter. Animals also need shelter from rains and from heat. They also have fear. They also want sleep. All these are common. Akara nidra bhayamaidhunancha samanamedat pasubhir naranam jnanam naranam adhigam visesho jnanena hinaha pasubhis samana. These verses have come down as part of India's or Hindu spiritual tradition, handed over from generation to generations of teachers and students. And these are found in the Uttara Gita. So food, sleep, fear, and many other biological needs that people have got, and this is also found among the animals. But there is something unique, something special to the human beings. That is the ability to ask the question, who am I and what's the meaning of my existence? Jnanam naranam adhigam visheshaha. Something unique in addition to what both animals and also human beings have got. Human beings have got this specific characteristic, that is jnanam, knowledge or buddhi. That makes him unique and different from the animals. So the idea is this: evolution not at the physical level, but evolution at the intellectual, emotional level, and also we should also include the spiritual level, that is found only among human beings. Spiritual level, of course, very high, but even other ideas, for example, body, strength, resources, wealth, riches, all this. Well, beyond this, how we need something so that we can make proper use of what resources we have, and we can prevent ourselves from making improper use of all these resources. That is jnana, and that is the special characteristic of human beings alone. So that is very important. Yeah. And then jnanena hinaha pasubhis samanaha. See, those who are devoid of this higher pursuit, higher quest, a quest for something higher than physical. People don't have any of these. They are just like animals, because animals also need shelter, food, everything else. Ahara, nidra, bhayam, maidhunam cha samanamedat pasubhir naranam jnanam naranam adhigam visheshaha jnanena hinaha pasubhis samanaha. This Uttara Gita was, it's supposed to have taken place, of this discussion is supposed to have taken place during the post-war period. After the war was over, people died on both sides, and then it was time for Krishna to go back to his divine abode from where he came to preserve, to sustain, to protect this world, to act as an act for preservation. and one age was coming to an end. So at that time, there was a disaster in the Kaurava Pandava race, the Kuru race, and Arjuna was a big soldier, but he could not protect the common people from evildoers because adharma was increasing and dharma was decreasing. And Lord Krishna was about to go back to his divine abode. The new age was coming. It's called Kali Yuga. It's called the mythological belief. So Arjuna found that he had become so weak, so ignorant, so imbecilic. Once they were traveling, some robbers came and took away whatever they possessed. But Arjuna could not even face a handful of ordinary robbers. Arjuna had been deprived of whatever powers he already had because Krishna was not there. So that's why yatra yogeshwara Krishna yatra partho dhanudhara tatasri vijaya bhudit dhruva nidir madhir mama. That's the last verse, it's the 700th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Wherever there is yoga, there is Krishna, represented by Krishna, and wherever there is action, that is represented by Arjuna. So yoga should be there, action should be there. Action without yoga, action without intelligence, action without knowledge, action without some higher idealism, that's the meaning of jnanam here, human beings become totally helpless. So Arjuna could not even protect his own near and dear ones from robbers and evildoers. At that time, he requested Krishna to teach him again, to give him again some of the teachings that he had given already earlier in the Bhagavad Gita during the Kurukshetra war, in Bhishma Parva, in only about 18 chapters. So Arjuna wanted to listen to some of those teachings once again. Krishna will tell him, well, you could not retain, you could not remember what I already taught you at that time, but I won't be able to teach you the same thing again with the same momentum. So that's the context. So Uttara Gita is supposed to be linked to the post-Kurukshetra war. It's a kind of post-Kurukshetra war dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. But one important teaching that comes from Krishna is this one. Jnanena hinaha pasubhisamanaha. Without this higher idealism, higher pursuit, human beings become almost like animals. And then there are other important things. Pratha amutra purishabhyam madhyane shutpipasaya tripta kamena vardhyanti cha arte vam nisididraya. The human predicament, people who have no idea of anything other than enjoying physical pleasures, other than empirical enjoyments. Their predicament, their condition, their characteristics are described here. In the morning, we have to perform the necessities of everyday life in the morning. Prataha amutra purishabhyam. So that we need to explain the needs, the basic needs, responsibility, duties everyone does in the morning. And then in the middle of the day, madhyane shutpipasaya. So during the middle of the day, eating plenty of food, drinking whatever need. And then in the evening, he spends his time for fulfilling the biological drives, and afterwards he says, ante va nisididraya, and the last duty is to go to sleep. This is how an average ordinary human being lives. Again, this is mentioned to emphasize the need for the higher desire. The higher desire means jnanam, the pursuit of some transcendental value of value of life. That's right. That's why they have to. So this verse becomes potent and relevant only in the context of the previous one. The previous verse, the text tells you that normally all living beings, both animals and human beings, need food, sleep. They have got fear, anxiety from neighbors, other animals, and other human beings, competition, all these human beings, other fellow human beings, all these are there. That's common for animals and human beings both. Even the most civilized, educated person also goes through these fundamental characteristics. We'll have all these characteristics. But in addition to all these, there is something unique that's found only among human beings. That is, jnanam naranam adhikam visheshaka. Naranam adhikam visheshaka jnanam. But what is found among human beings, in addition to all these, which is not found among the animals, is this desire for, or this higher pursuit of some higher idealism, some higher values. That is jnanam. Jnanena hinaha pasubhi samanaha. Without that higher pursuit of knowledge or values, all human beings are the same as animals. And how animals and human beings live without this higher idealism, that is mentioned in the next one, the 42nd. Prataramutra purishabhyam madhyanekshu pipasaya triptaha kamena vadhyandi chandeva nisididreya. So, triptaha, they are all satisfied with all this, but they don't have any higher pursuit. This is one example of the sublime teachings of Uttara Gita. This is about ordinary human beings. Now what about people who are much more evolved? They also have something higher here. Ananda Shastram Bhuvedidavyam Alpascha Kalo Bhavascha Vignaha Sarabhudam Tatuvasidavyam Hamso Yatha Kshiramivambu Misram. So what to study? There are so many things to be studied in this world. Ananda Shastram, so many different branches of knowledge. So, Lord Shankaracharya himself says, it becomes like a forest, too much of intellectual activity without the support of some higher ideals can create a kind of intellectual anarchy, confusion that's commonly found. That's why Ananda Shastram Bhuvedi Devyam. There are so many innumerable shastras, different branches of learning to be studied, to be mastered. And again, and it is a long time, Alpasya Kalo Bhavasya Vignaha. It takes a long time for us to master even one branch of learning. A time is short. Human life in ancient times may have been much shorter than what it is now. Longevity has increased. But still, compared to the availability, the scope for learning, so many branches of learning and languages, we may have the desire to do all these. So even when we become highly gifted, higher than animals, still that is not enough. In the previous chapters I mentioned, that is, it's not enough to have only food, sleep and other requirements. We should also look for some higher values, higher knowledge that's mentioned in the previous section. Here, well, that is good. Some higher knowledge, some higher pursuit, music, philosophy, mysticism, all these are certainly very good, certainly far better than just being immersed in physical activities and physical enjoyments. That is true. But even in the world of intellectual pursuit, there is a limitation. Why? Ananda Shastram Bhuvedi Devyam. There is so much of learning to be mastered, so much of the Shastras, branches of sciences of learning to be mastered, and the time is very short. Alpascha kalaha. Time is very short. Human longevity is very limited. And bhavascha vignaha means there are so many obstacles. Physical problem, illness, and also there are so many other difficulties, challenges we may have to face in our effort to study and to become enlightened, so to speak. Yasarabhudam tat upasidavyam. So the only way to solve this problem is whatever is most essential to be studied and mastered should be studied. And then we should also practice this in our life. So even while deciding what to study, we should use our own powers of discrimination. That's why hamso yatha kshiram ivambu misram. So let's say milk and water mixed together. It's a diluted milk, water and milk mixed together. So certain swan is believed, it's a mythological belief, we don't know. A swan is able to select milk alone and leave out water. Like that is a hamsaha, swan, yatha kshiram ivambu misram. Misram means the mixture, the diluted milk, which contains both milk and also water. But a swan is able to separate milk from water, and it can drink the milk and leave out water. It's like that. We should also try to find out a way to focus on what is important and what is essential and what is non-essential. Yet sarabhudam tad upasidavyam. Whatever is the essence of different sciences of learning, that we should study. I think what is meant here is we should study, of course, but we should also study how to manage, how to handle our knowledge. That's called wisdom in Vedantic time. It is called medha, purified wisdom. Wisdom not only just studies, but also learns the art of managing our information and knowledge. So there is this evolution that is from information, which that we may have a lot of disconnected pieces of information, mutually disconnected pieces of information we may have. But we don't know how to organize it. We may not know how to choose what is needed for us for practical purpose. And after that, there is a next stage where knowledge, scholarship, which is nothing but organized information. When the different pieces of information get organized, harmonized, then it becomes scholarship. But wisdom is something that's much higher. Wisdom enables us to decide for what purpose this knowledge is to be used and for what purpose the knowledge should not be used. That higher skill is what is meant by yasara bhudam. The essence of knowledge is the knowledge of making proper use of what we study, and also the knowledge of resisting the temptation to make improper use. That also is part of this yasara bhudam. So this is a very, very wonderful work which is very celebrated. My purpose is only to introduce some of these teachings, and then I will take up another section of the Mahabharata. In the same Uttara Gita, you can find there is another verse. It's so highly philosophical and highly profound from a Vedantic perspective. Agnir Devo Dvijatinam Muninam Kriti Pratima Khalu Alpa Buddhida Sarvatra Samadarsinam. So different levels of spiritual seekers are mentioned here. So Agnir Devo Dvijatinam. So those who follow the hierarchical, the traditional way of worship, people, different classes of society, they may worship, they may perform their spiritual disciplines in their own fashion, may be different from one group and another group. In Indian tradition, Hindu tradition, there was absolutely no restriction as to whom to worship and how to pray. Unlike the Abrahamic traditions where you have to adhere to certain set rules and regulations. Any violation, any deviation, especially in the Middle Ages, was considered to be a sacrilege and a blasphemy. But here in the same family you find father going to one temple, mother going to another temple, so very common. But then that itself is not the highest state of spiritual discipline. That's emphasized here. So Agnir Devo Dvijatinam. In society, Dvijas, those are twice born. So they worship Agni, Deva, Shiva, Vishnu. You can add all this. This is precisely a reference to Vedic age. Muninam Kriti Daivadam. When you evolve further, then according to our own evolution, our own idea of God also changes. At the beginning, at the very kindergarten of our spiritual life, we may believe, well, if I pray to this specific God in a specific manner, following certain traditions, a given hierarchy of traditions and conventions, then that is spirituality. That's perfectly okay. That's fully justified at that level. But as you evolve further, there is also an evolution of your concept of God. There is also an evolution, a progression in our concept of spirituality, in our own concept of God. So what happened? Muninam Kriti Daivadam. The Muni, those who are meditative, those who do a lot of mananam, that is Muni, more or less introspective people who mostly meditate on God as an indweller in their own hearts. They belong to higher level of spiritual evolution. They meditate on Atman as the indweller in their own heart. Then Pratima Khalu Alpabuddhinam. External rituals, those who believe that external rituals, the beginning and the end of spirituality, they are small-minded. They are not highly evolved. And who are the highest? The highest are those who can see and feel the presence of God everywhere. So this also is in harmony with the Bhagavata interpretation of devotion or devotee. In the Bhagavata Purana you find the highest devotee is one who can see the presence of God everywhere, in everything, in everyone. Who can also see the presence of everything and everyone in God. So, Sarva Bhudeshu Pasyet Bhagavad Bhavamatmanaha Bhudani Bhagavati Atmani Esha Bhagavatottamaha. The highest. Sarvatra Samadarsinam. They believe that God is present in everyone. So everyone is an expression of the divine. In the sense that you don't think that every human being or everything is God. Not in that sense. That will become some kind of an extreme kind of primitive animism or pantheism. No. Here the implication is you cannot do any harm to anyone because everyone is included in the totality of the divine in that sense. So that gives us an exalted understanding of life as a whole. This again is found in the Vedic literature also, I find. That's taken. Actually, many of these teachings are taken from Vedic tradition. In the Gaudavada's Karika, you find Susiddhanta Vyavasthasu Duitino Nischidadridham Parasparam Viruddhindi Taihi Ayamna Viruddhiri. So, Shankaracharya wrote a commentary on this. He says, this Advaita Vedanta has no quarrel with anyone because it looks upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. So that is the highest. Again, that is a kind of mystical spiritual experience. Below that, there are the people belonging to different levels. Every kind of spiritual discipline is justified and fully given their due. But the point is, there is a gradual evolution in our life, and also there is an evolution, a progression in our own concept of the divine. That is also found here. Sarvatra Samadarsinam. Sarvatra avasthidam shantam na prapasye janardanam jnana chakshur vihinatvad anta suryamivotidam. That is also a very well-known statement here. You know, Sarvatra avasthidam shantam na prapasye janardanam. So, just like a blind man cannot see the sun, also the sun is giving light to the entire world. Jnana chakshur vihinatva anta suryamivotidam. Surya means the sun. Sun is brilliant in the sky and it gives light to everyone. Because of sunlight we are able to see everything. But still what happens is, a blind man, jnana chakshur vihinatva, means antha, those who don't have jnana chakshu, those who have the spiritual vision, those who don't have the spiritual insight, they can't see the meaning of the statement that's made earlier, that is, sarvatra samadarsinam. Those who see the whole creation as inseparable, as non-different and non-distinct from God, those who equate creation with Creator. They cannot hurt anyone. For them, everyone is an expression of the divine. This is the highest idea. But others who cannot see this idea, these higher ideas, they are like people who can't see the sunlight because they are blind. They don't have this spiritual vision, jnana chakshu. So they are not able to realize the supreme truth. So you can find all these ideas in the Mahabharata. Some of them very grand, very great. Some of them very, very close to our own life. For example, the teaching that we may have everything which is common with the animal kingdom. But what makes us different is this higher vision, the ability to pursue something higher than what is needed for our physical enjoyments. That is the special characteristic of human beings. And those who don't have this characteristic, they are not very different from animals. Very strong statement. And then there are the higher teachings. So you can see Mahabharata is like an ocean. It contains some of the most exalted teachings. It also contains some of the very, very ordinary teachings which everyone can make use of, and also certain scenes which are full of conflicts and dilemmas and which are very sensational situations which are found in Mahabharata. Now I am going to take up another very important subject, that is Vidura Niti. That is also an important part of Mahabharata. Vidura Niti. That is also found in the Udyoga Parva. So those who are interested. This book is sometimes, this is from, I am reading Mahabharata, but remember it is available as a separate book like Bhagavad Gita. Vidura was the brother of Dhritarashtra, who was blind. Blind not only physically but also intellectually, he was blind. He was so attached to his own children who were doing terrible things. Out of his affection, because of his affection, he could not restrain Duryodhana. So we have already seen in the dialogue between Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. And after finding that his words are not producing the desired effect, Duryodhana was totally adamant in creating this war situation. Dhritarashtra himself, as a soliloquy, he says, well, you are not listening to me, but day will come when you will remember these words. When you suffer the war, you will remember the words that I am uttering to you right now. With this, that dialogue between the blind man, the king, the father, and his evil son, it comes to an end. Now, Vidura is a totally different person, the embodiment of the highest wisdom. He is truthful, impartial, he is wise, and he is always is trying to interfere, to mediate, so that everyone lives in happiness and joy and tranquility. It's called Vidura Niti. It's found in one of the subdivisions called Upavarga. So Udyoga Parva has many subdivisions, Upavargas. 8 chapter. So it has got 8 chapters from 33rd to 40th chapter. So it's also fairly big in size. The Uttara Gita is a small work, 3 chapters, 122 verses in the larger version, or 119 verses in the smaller one. But Viduranidhi is quite big. It has 8 chapters with 593 verses. It's a very, very important book, and it's available as a separate handbook. Not as big as Bhagavad Gita, but certainly quite a substantial work. So the story background should be explained before we actually go to the subject. Story background in this. Again, this war is becoming obviously unavoidable, inescapable, imminent. Krishna and others tried their best to avoid this, and Duryodhana continued to be so obstinate, not willing to listen to the wise words of Krishna, Vidura and others. Then one day, Dhritarashtra sent Sanjaya to Pandava's camp. It's a separate kind of emissary, like a diplomat, an ambassador. And Sanjaya goes to Pandava's residence, and he understood what was happening. He understood that Pandavas were on the side of justice, and they were not warmongers. They were doing their best to avoid this war. At the same time, Duryodhana was so obstinate, and so Sanjaya came back and told Dhritarashtra, well, there is no hope. You neglected bringing up your own children properly. There is a little story background you find in the Mahabharata narratives. The main text you find in many places. There was a problem with the Dhritarashtra Gandhari family. Gandhari was a queen, a woman who belonged to Gandhara Desha, somewhere between today's Afghanistan and Pakistan. According to one version, it's part of the one small kingdom in today's Afghanistan in ancient times, Gandhara Desha. So her brother Shaguni was another important evil character who was responsible for a lot of mischief that you can find later. Anyway, so Sanjaya went to Pandavas and he found that it's not going to happen, the war cannot be avoided. Then he came back to Dhritarashtra and told him, well, there's not much hope, but I shall present a report in the Kaurava court. Tomorrow I will make a final effort based on what I heard from Krishna and Pandavas, like Yudhishthira and others. I shall present a report of my effort to negotiate peace between the two groups. So tomorrow morning I will attend the court and present a report. Now Dhritarashtra could not sleep that night. He became totally disturbed. So he wanted to discuss this matter with his younger brother, Vidura. As I mentioned, Vidura is a great man, a great philosopher, a great sage, a great saint, an enlightened person. So he went to, he sent somebody to Vidura, and Vidura, please request Vidura to come. Vidura came at night to the Rashtra. And this is a dialogue that takes place between them. And of course, it contains many higher ideas. Along with that, there are also some great universal teachings we find, which contains one of the most sublime teachings of Mahabharata. Shiram pradhanam purushe tad yasyeha pranasyati na tasya jividena artho na dhanena na bandhubhihi. So, these are all great teachings, ethical, moral teachings. I think I should have mentioned earlier about Duryodhana and Gandhari failing to, and a failure to bring up their children properly. Gandhari was a great woman, an ideal wife, an ideal mother, but she made one mistake because she herself remained blindfolded, because she did not want to use her eyes when her husband was born blind. So remember, Dhritarashtra, the husband, was born blind. He married a blind woman. The blind woman, out of his devotion to her role as a partner of Dhritarashtra's life, as a wife, she herself remained blindfolded all the time. So there is a scene in Mahabharata, not here but little later in another context, where Krishna tells Gandhari, look here, you are certainly a great woman. You didn't want to use your God-given ability to see things. You remained blindfolded. But you made a mistake. You could not pay attention to your responsibility as a mother of bringing up your own children. That you neglected. Krishna tells Gandhari. Gandhari was a great woman. She was a very sublime character, feminine character in Mahabharata. Duryodhana and others went to seek her blessings before the war begins. Gandhari doesn't bless, he never blesses Duryodhana with victory, because she knew that if Duryodhana is victorious, adharma will prevail and dharma will be destroyed. She didn't want that to happen. So her affection for her children did not make her spiritually blind, ethically blind. So it was a voluntary blindness that she adopted, just out of respect and devotion to her own husband. So when Duryodhana asked her to pray for his victory and to bless him, so her response was, Yato dharmas tato jaya. She did not say, you are going to be victorious, because she knew in her heart that if Duryodhana became victorious, dharma will be defeated and adharma will be victorious. So he said, wherever dharma is, that side will become victorious. So you can indirectly raise a blessing to Pandavas. That's the greatness of this woman. She was so impartial, such a magnificent feminine character you find in Gandhari's character. So Vidura saw all these things happening. He did his best to correct and advise the Kauravas, but did not succeed. That's why he has some very wonderful things to say about human life. So, Sheelam Pradhanam Purushet Tad Yasyeka Pranasyati. So he says, the highest virtue of human beings is Sheelam, good character. When somebody loses his character, then he has no use, either long life or wealth or relatives or any other resources will be of no use if he loses his character. Now this Rupam Pradhanam Purushe Tat Yasyeka Pranasyati Na Tasya Jividena Artho Na Dhanena Na Bandhupihi. So this is the wisdom of Vidura. And again he says, just one more and then I will come to conclude. He says, Divasena iva tat kuryan yena ratrau sukham vaset. Ashtamasena tat kuryan yena varsha sukham vaset. He says, if you do our duty properly now, our next hour will be enjoyable. If we do our duty in the day, during daytime, we'll be able to sleep peacefully at night. If we spend our days, our lifetime properly, we'll be able to face death in a very peaceful manner. So, Divasena eva tat kurya. That means, for a better future, we should take care of our present. When we properly take care of our present, then we'll be able to take care of future. That Divasena eva tat kurya yena ratro sukham vaset. We should live our life in such a way during daytime so that night time will be peaceful and calm and quiet. It shows Ashtamasena tat kurya yena varsha sukham vaset. So when we work hard properly for a few months, then what happens is the whole year will be peaceful. This continues Purve Vayasi tat kurya yena vruddha sukham vaset. Yavat jivena tat kurya yena pretya sukham vaset. So, when we become old, if we want to enjoy peace and happiness when you become old, then we should make proper preparations earlier. When we are young, we should do what is to be done, do our duty properly, then old age will be a pleasant experience. Again, yavat jivena tat kurya yena priti sukham vaset. Now, after leaving this world, so again this is linked to the doctrine of reincarnation and doctrine of karma. So, yavat jivena tat kurya yena priti sukham vaset. So, when we live properly in this world, then we will have an enjoyable life in the afterworld, after death. So these are, anyway, that's linked to law of karma and reincarnation. So you can ask questions now. We will continue with the Ranidhi for 1 or 2 sessions, maybe at least one more session next week. Okay, thank you.
And at this point, I'll go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah.
I'll adapt it from the question that was put on the chat at the end of last week's session. As we
please.
As we were concluding.
Yeah, thank you.
And I did message the inquirer who opted not to ask the question, didn't respond to ask the question. If you can hear me and you want to ask it yourself, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and ask the question for you. Yeah. Okay. So, he's asked me to go ahead. The question is, Swamiji, does Swadharma does it also not mean doing something that brings internal peace of mind from those actions? For example, Swadharma in choice of profession.
Yeah.
For example, in the case of Arjuna as a warrior, And I wanna embellish that question a little bit because I know you already kind of answered it.
Yeah.
But we find it's obvious that Arjuna is encouraged to do his duty in his chosen profession, the one that he is responsible for.
Yeah.
But in our lives, we often see that we have specialized in a profession. I've encountered a lot of people who have specialized in a profession and they don't specifically believe in that. They found it expedient, they're trained, but they feel in their heart that their deepest responsibility lies in an additional field.
Yeah.
And if they were to continue to perform in their specialty, this is a different situation because lives are at stake, there's a protective thing. Many of us, we have more than one skill, and we go through different phases of life, and we may wish to adapt for our own peace of mind as well as our duty to the rest of the world.
Yeah. So you mean to ask, if I understood properly, when we are doing our work, we have one profession, one job but we don't feel that's the best job for us, but we have to do it. So
well, the questioner is asked about peace of mind and choice of profession, for example.
Yeah.
Now, what if in this scenario Arjuna said, "I'm not really cut out to be a warrior"?
Yeah, that's true. Here, but that is Arjuna was deceiving himself.
Of course.
In Arjuna's case, Arjuna had come to the battlefield armed to the teeth. And he was a seasoned warrior. All his life he was fighting for Dharma, for a just cause. And then at last moment he says, he tries to talk like a Christ, like a Buddha. So he says, "Na kamshe vijayam Krishna, na chirajam sukhanija, kim no rajyena govinda, kim bhogehi jivitena va." All that he says. What's the use of all these victory in battle, all that? He was preparing for it till that very moment. So there Krishna sees a problem in Arjuna's mind. He was trying to deceive himself and deceive others. In such a situation, he will not be able to do anything. Again, he misunderstood that action or one's own karma is problematic. He cannot enjoy it. So he may do something else which may be enjoyable. And he even goes to the extent of Guru Nahatwahi Mahanubhavan Srayo Bhoktum Bhaiksham Apikaloke Hatvartha Kamams Guru Nahevan Bunjiya Bhogan Ridhira Pradignan. He says, I would rather be a beggar. Bhaiksham Apikaloke. Bhaiksham means I would rather live by begging than indulging in this form. Now that is not Arjuna whom Krishna had seen earlier till that moment. It's a different Arjuna. This frequently happens in our life. Without our being aware of it, we may be deceiving ourselves. So Krishna had the insight to see that. So Krishna, another important point is, let's say in modern context, our own times. Suppose you are a doctor or you are an engineer, but you rather be something else, teaching in a university, some philosophy or something, poetry, but you can't do that because salary is not very good for, though in the humanities almost abysmal. So you rather be an IT man with plenty of money, which you don't like it really, it's being transactional, computer screen. So, well, in that case, your duty, your adherence to your profession for your train, which you don't like, that itself becomes part of Dharma. Why? Because you need to do that to take care of yourself, your family, society, and so on. So Dharma also includes our responsibility, our sense of obligation to those who are living, those who are dependent upon ourselves. Suppose an IT professional says, I would rather be a musician, he resigns his job, he loses his money, and he has family to take care of, and then my Swadharma is, I would rather be a musician. It is not Swadharma. His Swadharma includes doing his work as an IT professional At the same time, whenever possible, try to devote time, energy for music, and that he actually enjoys doing. So this is very important. So dharma includes whatever is needed to be done for taking care of a family. The Shankaracharya has a magnificent statement in the Taittiriya Upanishad Bhashya. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a convocation address. Vedamanucharyo Devasinamani Shasti Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara Satyana Pramidavyam Dharmana Pramidavyam etc. And then after 2-3 lines below that says Kushala na Pramadidavyam Bhutye na Pramadidavyam. Kushala Shankaracharya says Atma Samrakshanatha Karmanaha na Pramadidavyam. What it means is you should never deviate from your duties and responsibilities which are needed to take care of yourself and those who are dependent upon you. These instructions follow after some family-related instructions above. You should respect your parents, Madhurdeva, Bhava, Piturdeva, all these come before that. And then only this comes, which means Shankaracharya says, you cannot call yourself to be a man of dharma if you don't make enough effort to take care of yourself, and also by that you are also taking care of those who are dependent upon you. Because that is also included in this Swadharma ideal. That's a very important thing. That's next. Yeah, thank you.
I hope I did justice to the original question, but I mean, part of the context in the epic is the cowardice of not stepping up when the task is a difficult one. That's part of the
I tell you, Arjuna's problem was something much more profound than cowardice. Arjuna was renowned as a very brave, totally fearless soldier. One of the greatest soldiers in the Mahabharata epic. So Arjuna was not a coward by nature. But Arjuna himself says, Atma Sammudha Yoga, means he was completely deluded. He deluded himself into thinking that by running away from this important duty, which is unpleasant, I can solve the problem of action. Action is problematic. So there was certainly an element of cowardice in it, but the word may not go well with Arjuna's character, because basically he was the very embodiment of the opposite of cowardice, bravery, courage. So that's why Krishna called him a hypocrite, not a coward.
Yes.
Krishna called him a hypocrite. Mithyachara, Prajna Vadamsa Bhashi. So Krishna uses the right word, the right context. He called him a Mithyachara. And it's an act of hypocrisy rather than cowardice. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Swami.
Yeah.
My question, I have two questions that are related. I didn't realize when you mentioned that Arjuna lost his power, and I'm confused, and it had something to do with Krishna, but I mean, Arjuna had such vast skill and so forth. So when you said something about he lost his power because Krishna left, I was confused by that.
I should explain that. You know, when the Mahabharata war caused the destruction of his own relatives, his own teachers, his own elders, it was a tragedy for Arjuna. But when he found out that Krishna also was going back to his divine abode, after that only this Uttara Gita context, the situation comes. So Arjuna became mentally very weak, depressed. So he could not lift his bow and arrow to protect his own women folk, whom he was taking from one place to another place as a guard. So that's the story. So again, I want to repeat again, this is in Uttara Gita. Uttara Gita is technically not found as a part of the Mahabharata in the critical edition. So there are different views regarding its place and its authenticity. So there only the background is this: Arjuna becomes very, very weak, weak mentally, mostly mentally, because he felt the purpose is nothing else to be done. That sort of situation. Arjuna was a very deeply sensitive person, very brave but very sensitive. That's what really created conflicts for him before the war. Krishna, I mentioned earlier, Krishna did not teach Bhima. Bhima won't feel any conflict. He was intellectually not intelligent enough even to feel that kind of internal conflict. Yudhishthira also won't have any conflict because he knows all these higher ideas. He was a scholar. Arjuna was very sensitive. Arjuna represents humanity as a whole. Very, very sensitive person. So that's why he became a bit inactive and inert after the Mahabharata was over. I mean, after Krishna's Surkarana. That's the story behind. Okay, thank you.
So I have another question then, Swami, about Arjuna. Is that he got the entire teachings of the Gita in person from God, and he even had a vision of Krishna.
Yeah.
How could he forget?
Yeah, that's why.
How
That
could
is
he
true.
forget?
That is true. That's true. No, again, you have to remember, Arjuna was not like Vidura. Arjuna was a person who got a great lesson and inspiration and became active under the power of that inspiration from Krishna. But Arjuna had not become a great philosopher like Vidura. That's the point in that mind. So Krishna himself scolds him. You didn't listen to me properly. You understood that you forgot. Krishna scolds him. That is also found in Uttara Gita. Okay, so story.
Swamiji, I wanted to give a context to the question that Bobbyji asked before.
Yeah.
In the last lecture in the Mahabharata thing, you mentioned about the Vyada Gita context, the lady who was serving her husband.
Yeah.
And she basically says that, and she's a saint herself, right? So, and I think if I remember correctly, you were mentioning that just doing her job so well made her so aware, right? And so I sort of, and you were talking about she was doing her dharma, right? And that's how I think you had positioned it.
Yeah.
So I sort of, that's where this context of finding the swadharma sort of resonated, because on one hand, there is always this, like what Babaji was asking, you have this thing of, I want to embrace my context and minimize the resistance to what is in front of me is just a gift, I'm just going to do what I have to do. But there are other occasions when on a daily basis, you're thinking, when the job is really hard, like in Arjuna's context, there are settings where maybe the job is too hard, maybe the job has internal conflicts. And then you try to use a rubric to tell yourself that, I'm going to do it or not do it or judge how to do it. So I'm just trying to get a better handle on how, what is the distinction between the story that sort of the woman performing her dharma. I guess her swadharma was to serve her context, right? So I think I'm just trying to understand the distinction between these two.
Yeah. So
scenarios,
Yeah, I understand. So you're right. So when the lady told this yogi, this saint, the ascetic, well, I am not doing anything other than doing my own duty as a housewife, and that's why I became like this. She also said that Vyadha was her teacher. She pointed out Vyadha's name and gave him direction to reach there. When the ascetic asked him, "Who is your teacher?" And she said, Vyadha was teacher. So Vyadha must have taught her, gave him some instructions. Without getting some higher instruction, we won't actually be able to do our swadharma as swadharma. So the question is, is it enough to know the concept? It's certainly enough to begin taking a new look at our own duty. Let's suppose you read a book on Gita, listen to our ideas, oh, karma has got another dimension, I do my duty, so dharma. That is perfectly okay. But in the process, there will be conflicts in the mind. Sometimes, so dharma, doing work without any attachment, can degenerate into indifference, inefficiency. That could happen. Krishna himself foresaw this problem. Krishna in the Gita says, don't teach a person karma yoga or swadharma all of a sudden. Na buddhi bhedam janayed ajnanam karma sankinam, he says. So, those who are habituated to doing things, the great attachment and great identification, if you tell them one day, oh, tomorrow onwards you practice karma yoga, so dharma, not possible. If the person takes it seriously, he will become totally inert and inactive. The idea of combining doing our work with all dedication and effectiveness and efficiency, at the same time without any attachment, that requires some kind of internal training. Mere concept will not be enough. So the lady must have got some instruction from Vyadha. This is very important. Frequently we face this problem. When we try to do our work as karma yoga, try to think, well, I do my best without looking for the results, either we may slowly degenerate, our efficiency level goes down. That could happen. Or we may become a hypocrite, doing things with all desire and claiming to be a karma yogi. That possibility is there. Krishna is giving a correct picture of a real karma yogi. Saktaha karmanya vidyam swedha kurvandi bharata kurya vidyam tatha asaktaka chegu shloka sankhya. Which means you are a karma yogi, you are doing a swadharma, but you are doing a work with the same efficiency, the same devotion and dedication and application, but without attachment. That requires a special efficiency, which Krishna is called Kaushalam in the Gita in the second chapter. Mechanically, we can certainly begin. When we are facing a big problem, then this may so dharma, I should do it. It may help us. But when we face some conflicts arising in our mind, we won't be able to find a solution unless we understand the psychological dynamics of karma yoga. Which means you are not 1 inch inferior to the most dedicated person doing everything with greatest attachment. The only difference is you are non-attached, no attachment. When it comes to efficiency, you have the same level of efficiency. Say, let's for example, extreme efficiency and extreme level of non-attachment. So, in this verse, Kurya Vidwan Tatha Asaktaka. The yogi, karma yogi is also doing work the same efficiency, tatha, same effectiveness, but is detached. So in real practice, it should be problematic unless we understand it properly. The internal dynamics, psychological dynamics are somewhat different. Mind may try to deceive itself. That's the problem. So we should be guarding ourselves from degenerating into inefficiency, indifference or hypocrisy. So it happens. A karma yogi has no room to have this conflict. So because even conflict will be zero when you don't have any attachment. But that zero attachment can cause inefficiency. That should be avoided. That's why Krishna is reminding them. I gave on this platform many examples. The greatest men of action were with karma yogis. I give the example of Shankaracharya. This man is the greatest name in India's spiritual philosophical tradition. No greater name. The amount of work he did, 32 years, walking all over Indian subcontinent 4 times, writing the most profound books, starting 10 monastic orders. He gathered all the monks, even the Kumbh Mela traditionally belongs to him. And 4 monasteries, hundreds of temples reclaimed and installed. And then, writing these commentaries I mentioned, debates. And again, he also taught you how to do puja properly, Panchadevata puja. And he taught the 64 upacharas. In the most elaborate puja, you find only maximum 16, 64. He was teaching how to do puja properly, while teaching that you don't have to go to a temple to be spiritual. On the one hand, he was teaching you how to perform your puja properly with all Shraddha. At the same time, the Bhashya, he says, temple worship alone will not make you enlightened. But he has no contradiction, no conflict. And with a smile, he disappeared as he came. So, where do you find an example? Just 32 life, and you also remember the amount of work he did. Ramanuja lived 120 years, remember, almost 4 times Shankaracharya's lifespan. All other acharyas were long lived, but he was still a youngster when he passed away. He was a child when he began, he was a young man when he died, and within that he did so much. So even if you look at history, that's why I mentioned earlier, Sister Nivedana's Web of Indian Life, she writes 1.5 magnificent paragraphs, she writes. There, she gives a list of great Christian theologians and musicians, Abelard, Ignatius Loyola, many others, St. Francis of Assisi, all that. And the greatest poets, Aquinas, Augustine, great musicians. Shankaracharya was a great musician, 93 magnificent devotional poetic classics. And he says, how do you even conceive of such a man? In India today, if you go to extreme Bangladesh border, Burmese border, Tripura, you hear about Shankaracharya. His footprints can be still found. If you go to trace Afghanistan, you can find his footprints. All the way Badrinath, the temple which he reinstalled, purified, and he brought this priest all the way from the extreme south, where he was born, to do puja in Badrinath, near Indo-Tibetan border. And all he did, 32 years. Walking in India in 8th century, 4 times, there were no real roads, even village roads or forest roads were they developed only from around 10th, 11th century. Malik Dinar's raids to South India. Malik Dinar was the, Malik Kafur. I'm talking Malik Kafur. Malik Kafur was the general of Alauddin Khilji, Malik Kafur, who invaded South India, destroyed many temples, converted a lot of massacres. That was the time when bigger roads began to develop in India's forest regions, in the central provinces. But Shankaracharya walked in 8th century, and Malik Kafur came in 12th, 13th century, almost 600, 500 years later. So how did he walk? Thousands of miles. So, what I mean to say, he did all this, absolutely no problem. So, that's what he, there is karmanya karmaye pasya akarmani cha karmayeka sabuddhima manishyesu sayukta krishna karmaka. A karma yogi will see action in inaction, inaction in action, because he goes beyond action, inaction equation, transcends both. But again, that's a very high level. To begin with, we can say, well, you do your duty to the best of your efficiency, but the worst thing that happened, the worst thing that happened is to interpret Karma Yoga as inaction or fatalism. That is the worst and most deplorable thing that would happen. It is the very antithesis of fatalism. Thank you for the question.
Yes, I think that's a great place for us to conclude.
Now, the question was very relevant because Karma Yoga can create a lot of internal conflicts leading to hypocritical thought currents or degradation into inefficiency in action and interpreting I am doing Karma Yoga, so let things happen. No, you should do your thing to make sure it happens. And then keep the mind away. Leaving things to nature and fate is not Karma Yoga. That's the opposite of it. If Shankaracharya had that attitude, he would not have walked 4 times all over Indian subcontinent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Baba.
Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.